So Twin Flames Universe was created back in June of 2014 by a married couple named Jeff and Shalia Divines and or Aeon. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with the term twin flames is very similar to the term of soulmates. It's basically like your other half, like the person that you know that you're just going to spend the rest of your life with. You're completely in love with them. It's like a soul connection that you have with this person. That's basically what the term twin flames is supposed to represent. But going a little bit into the backstories of the leaders of this cult, Jeff and Shalia. Jeff grew up in Michigan, and ever since he was younger, he always told everyone that he was going to be a millionaire. He never knew how he was going to do it or when he was going to do it. He just always said that when he grew up, he wanted to be a millionaire. As Jeff grew up, he grew up in a very strict Roman Catholic household, and then even went to a private Catholic school until transferring to public school in his high school years. But even though in high school he was in public school, he was said to be a very devout Roman Catholic. When he left high school, that's when he started to stray away from the religion a little bit and decided to go to business school. In 2011, after Jeff graduated business school, that's when him and his sister decided to move from Michigan to Hawaii for Jeff to basically explore himself a little bit. So when he was out there, he ended up getting a spiritual teacher that he worked with every day. He claimed that in one of his meditation sessions with his spiritual teacher, he had contacted angels, and those angels told Jeff that his life's purpose was to bring the people back to God. He also changed his name during this time as well, from Jeff to Enders. So a year into him living into Hawaii, so around 2012, that's when Jeff started to try to create his own businesses. And one of those businesses was endersadventures.com, which was basically like a blog. He would post all about his travels and little things that was happening in his life, but unfortunately this just didn't really take off. But Jeff very much still was like in the spiritual space, and he also started to join a bunch of Facebook groups of people with the same interests, and that is actually where he met Shalia. Shalia currently lived in Sedona, Arizona, and a little bit of backstory on Shalia. Her name is actually Megan Plant, but she goes by Shalia because that's her spiritual name. Born and raised in Canada by her parents, at the age of 12 is when her parents got a divorce, but she stayed in Canada with her mom while her dad went to go move out to the States. Now, when Shalia was 15, that's when her mom unfortunately passed away of cancer, so she had to leave Canada and move to the States to be with her dad. But this transition from moving to Canada into the States with her dad was extremely rough. Her and her father never saw eye to eye. They had a very strained relationship, and this led Shalia to go off and travel to different states and just kind of be a free spirit. And even her herself was involved in a lot of these spiritual groups on Facebook and ended up meeting Jeff through there. Shalia around this time was also learning about twin flames and what that means, and when you meet your twin flame or when you meet your soulmate, you're going to know that this is the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. And Shalia claims that when she met Jeff, she felt that same exact way, and then same thing for Jeff. He felt a very extreme connection with Shalia, and eventually Jeff ended up flying from Hawaii out to Arizona just to visit Shalia. When they met, Shalia claims that when she saw Jeff, it was like a weight had been lifted off of her shoulders. It was truly love at first sight.
This is like the next stage of my life, being coupled with somebody, and so I felt like in many ways I was tying up loose ends. And just taking a lot of rest and relaxation and just being really gentle with myself. And, you know, I had some fears come up surrounding, last minute fears I call it, I don't know, surrounding him coming, and like a lot of my insecurities came out. I feel self-assured sometimes when you're doing long distance relationship. It requires, I think, a hell of a lot more trust than like if you're with someone.
No, I just want to reiterate what you were saying, that without that physical component, there's a lot of things that your mind will do to you, your body will do to you, to try to direct you away from the relationship, to get needs met for you that can't possibly be met for you long distance. As people, we need touch. We need to be in the presence of our partner to feel a certain type of connection.
So about a year into the relationship, around 2013, is when Shalea decided to move from Arizona, where she was currently going to school to be a hairdresser. She was going to beauty school, but she decided to move out of Arizona and into Hawaii so that she could live with Jeff full time. And then that's when, in June of 2014, a year into their full relationship, they were still so madly in love with each other. They have learned so much through each other, and that is when they realized, I kind of feel guilty for having this much love with a person, and this is a once in a lifetime experience, and wouldn't it be great if we could just share this with other people and help other people have the same love that we have? So that is when, in 2014, Twin Flames Universe was created. Now, Twin Flames Universe wasn't their only business venture. They also had two companies prior to this, one called Divine Guide Readings and the other one called Awakened Intimacy. But then finally, Twin Flames Universe was the business that actually took off.
Hi, I'm Ender Ionethos.
Hi, I'm Shalia Plant.
And we're here to talk to you today about our long distance relationship.
And our first meeting.
We've been long distance for 4 months now. We met online. I came here from Hawaii. Shalia lives here in Sedona. And what do we want to go over?
They continue to post content about how to meet your twin flame and what it's like to meet your twin flame and how to manifest love into your life. It was very spiritual, lots of card readings, things like that in the beginning, just very typical of what you would see of a spiritual channel. And then over time, they started to get a lot of traction on their channel. They started to get a lot of people watching them and commenting. And then the following year in 2015, they released their first book titled Twin Flames: Finding Your Ultimate Lover. In this book is where Jeff would have a very detailed account of the first time that he met Shalea. They had met through a spiritual group on Facebook, and then they decided to get on a 30-minute FaceTime with each other. But at the end of the FaceTime call, Jeff had asked her to marry him, kind of in a joking way, but then he says in the book that he knew he wasn't kidding, and he knew that Shalea was going to be the love of his life. So from 2015 to 2016, things with Twin Flames Universe was really starting to pick up. It wasn't like a crazy explosion, but the group was gradually getting larger and larger. And so that's when they decided to make a video in 2016 celebrating their very first home together. Shalea says in this video that her and Jeff actually got married 2 months ago, and they just decided to get their own home together. They claim that the reason why they got this new home was because they needed a place to be in that vibrated as high as they did and needed a place to sort of be like a temple, but then quickly kind of like glosses over the fact that they also needed to get a house because they literally would have had no place to live because they were recently illegally evicted from their old apartment after their landlord had a psychotic breakdown.
I'll tell you what's happened. We moved. Finally, we moved to our own house. It's a townhouse, a 3-story townhouse. Some of you may or may not know that Jeff and I got married 3 months ago in January. Haven't had our own place yet. Like, we sort of did in Hawaii, but it was really like we lived in like a really huge house that was cut off into sections. So you basically we felt like we were like living with all our neighbors. We didn't it wasn't all that private at all. So we got like illegally evicted by our landlord, who just literally had out of nowhere a psychotic breakdown. And it was really scary, and like we called the cops. Actually, she called the cops on herself, but basically she was like trying to call them on us, and it just didn't make, it was really weird. It didn't make any sense. It worked out good in our favor because, well, as you can see, we landed our first really awesome home, and this is what Jeff and I have been focusing on manifesting.
So even though they were able to afford their very first home, how exactly were they getting all this money if all they were doing was posting YouTube videos? Well, they did post their YouTube videos, and they had their website, and they had their social medias, but on their website, they started to introduce e-courses and Twin Flame Ascension School. The e-courses were basically just like online classes, kind of like a master class, and of course, the Ascension School School and the e-courses were behind a paywall. So you would pay for these e-courses, these master classes on how to find the love of your life. And then as far as the Twin Ascension School, it wasn't really like a school where like you were live one-on-one with someone. It was more of just a package of pre-recorded videos done by Jeff and Shalea. But on their site, they do still have their e-courses and Ascension School, where their courses can cost anywhere from $333, the least amount you could pay, all the way up to $777, simply on a course to just make your dreams come true. Now, obviously, they know exactly what they're doing by making all of the totals angel numbers, but as I mentioned, that 300, that 700 price tag was just for the e-courses. The actual Twin Flame Ascension School is $3,333, or you could just pay a quick $888, almost $900, just for one Twin Flame Ascension School sermon. So it wasn't even like a class, it was just sermons, like as if they were preaching to the gospel or something. Or if you're really impatient and you really want to get the process to find your twin flame going, you could just buy everything on the site, everything that they have to offer, for as little as $8,888. Or they also have payment plans where you could do $888 a month for 12 months, which is literally just rent or like half rent for a lot of people. But before getting into today's case, I do want to give a big thank you to today's sponsor, ZocDoc. Sometimes growing older, going to the doctor just gets way more scarier, because recently I went to the doctor and had myself a checkup because I recently just turned 23, and sometimes growing older can also make you grow more into a fear of going to the doctor. And sometimes finding a good doctor is really hard, a doctor that you can feel vulnerable enough to talk to and explain all of your needs. And thankfully, today's sponsor, ZocDoc, is there to guide you. ZocDoc is a free website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and instantly book the appointment. You also have in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across nearly every specialty, from mental health to dental health to skin to eyes, and so much more. And even on their site, you can filter your searches to find doctors that take your insurance, doctors that are nearby, and a doctor that you feel is going to be a good fit for your needs and highly rated by verified patients. And it is so important to listen to your body, because sometimes, again, growing older, you can get scared to go to the doctor. I know I was. And also the environment of being in a doctor can sometimes be very intense and awkward. But thankfully, when I went to the doctor, I had ZocDoc by my side, and ZocDoc made it super easy for me to finally take that step and book the appointment. You can also view appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and click instantly to book a visit. And ZocDoc appointments happen really fast. They can get you an appointment between 24 and 72 hours, and sometimes you can even get same day appointments, and you don't even have to talk to anyone. You could just book it in a couple of clicks. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/Haley Elizabeth, or click the link in the description below to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. And thank you once again to ZocDoc for sponsoring today's video. Now back to your video. But despite the price tag, Twin Flames started to grow more and more. Twin Flames Universe at this point in 2018 had about 300 consistent clients, and as all of this clientele started to arise, that's when Jeff and Shalea kind of realized that they couldn't do this on their own and they're gonna need some outside help. So instead of actually getting outside help, they decided to have some of their clients become coaches in order to help other people accomplish the same thing in finding their twin flame. So they would basically get a lot of the people that they have been coaching for a while now on how to achieve their twin flame, and then they would ask that person, oh, you know, you're learning so much and you're growing at such a high rate. Have you ever considered coaching and maybe sharing this gift with other people? And it sounds like kind of a nice proposition, so people would start the training and become coaches for Jeff and Shalea. Shalea, but their coaching training wasn't actually something that they wanted to do or like advice that they wanted to give. It was more of just the teachings of Jeff and Shalea. Because according to their website, in order to become a coach, your certifications needs to be completed their Certified Ascension Coach, CAC, which is available on the site, their Master Certified Ascension Coach training, also available on the site. This is achieved through an in-depth Ascension Coach training, which is also available on the site, all behind a paywall, of course. Course over period of many months through Twin Flame Universe. To achieve master certifications, coaches will have completed the entirety of Jeff and Shalea's teachings of union, encompassing a minimum of 750 hours of work and study. Additionally, they must have provided a minimum of 100 hours of coaching sessions prior to their graduation as a Master Certified Ascension Coach. So not only were you having to pay for all of these sessions with Jeff and Shalea, if you wanted to become a coach and Jeff and Shalea thought that you would be incredible at being a coach, you would still have to pay for all of the courses that I just showed you, the 300, the 700. You would have to pay for all of those courses in order to maybe be qualified to become an actual coach. Now, as you see the cult starting to form, especially with that one quote, Jeff and Shalea's teachings of union. Usually, if you are in some sort of religious setting, like a church, for example, like Christianity, if you were to go on a mission, if you were to go across country and go somewhere else and spread the word of Jesus Christ, usually there is a minimum of certain hours that you need to complete for community service, for certain schools, and you also have to read the Bible. And then once you do all that, you can move on to going on to missions. And this is very, very similar to a religion. They must learn the teachings of Jeff and Shalea and then relay all of that information onto people that they coach, aka go on missions and relay the information of what they have just learned. But all of this information that they're relaying is none of their personal opinions, of purely of what just Jeff and Shalea think. Such as if you were someone who employed therapists and you had all of these therapists and you were employing them simply because you respect their work, you love what they do, and you love the advice that they give, and you love that their approach. At the end of the day, that therapist still has free range to treat their clients however they feel. They don't have someone in the background telling that therapist how to treat their patients and certain teachings to give to that patient. And that is what starts to make this cult feel more like a religion. But this is not a religion. This is literally just their opinions. And over time, Twin Flames Universe just grew bigger to where now Jeff and Shalea were on Zoom calls with hundreds of people at a time, just talking about their teachings, sort of motivational speeches. And a lot of people were so captivated by the way that Jeff spoke and by the way that Shalea spoke. They spoke about their love as if it was 1 in a million. They have truly cracked the code on love and is relaying all of this information to people. But one thing that they would do, they would never call what they were giving information, they would call it a gift, to basically associate that in people's mind, okay, gift, that's a thing for me, and that's a good thing for me. It's something that I look forward to. So by saying that it's a gift, it makes people feel like what they're receiving is a gift, but it's not actually like a gift. It's more of just, these are my opinions. And at this point, even to just be in one of these calls, it was a paywall. You would have to commit to at least 1 session per week with your coach. And once you were in Twin Flames Universe, you were immediately given a coach. And this coach was seen as a life coach or like a sponsor, someone you can talk to, someone that you can relate to. Anytime you're feeling super stressed or out of your head, you could just go to your coach for support and let them know what's going on. And they'll remind you of all of the wonderful things that Jeff and Shalea talk about as a way to keep you more grounded. So immediately when you are brought into this, you are already kind of sucked in because you are now obligated to report report to at least one session a week, and those sessions ranged from anywhere from $20 to $200. But again, this wouldn't just be $20 forever, because once you started getting coaching, then you start seeing results, you start talking about those results, you talk more to Jeff and Shalea about your results. All of a sudden, Jeff is approaching you, hey, wow, I'm really impressed with all of like the amazing work that you're doing. What if you became one of the coaches too? What if you did what your coach did and do the same for other people and try to help people be on the same track like you are? And then furthermore, you are then wrapped into coaching. So now you're wrapped into the coach training program and everything that you have to do that involves in that. And you don't really see it as you wasting your money. You see this as an investment for yourself. I'm investing money into these courses so that one day I can be a coach and make actual money. But all of this help wasn't actually help. It was literally just the teachings of Shalea and Jeff. And they will not allow anybody else to have their own opinions or ideas or even challenge any of their beliefs, because if they do that, then that means they're blocking reality and they're not actually thinking clearly. And so this is what makes people become more enrolled into this cult. So shortly after they had introduced their new home in 2018, that's when Jeff started to show off his new car collection as well, such as a $100,000 Porsche and an $80,000 Corvette.
This is the Porsche. It's a $100,000 Porsche. It's the 2018 Cayenne. We'll sit in that in a few minutes, but I want to talk about the Corvette first. This just came yesterday. This is one of the finest Corvettes that you can possibly buy today. It's a 2019 Corvette Z06, 650 horsepower. I got one for myself, and I got it in a way that didn't require me to work my ass off doing something I didn't love or care about. Now, I'm not here to like introduce you to an MLM scheme or some new business opportunity or something like that. I'm here to give you a gift, and that gift is an introduction to your equivalent for this for you.
And the reason why I feel like a lot of people tend to lean towards Jeff and Shalea, especially because of their teachings, because they set up their teachings or their work in a very specific way where it makes sense, and then it kind of doesn't make sense, but then it makes sense again, and they set it up in a way where, like, if you were to agree with the majority of what you just learned and what you just read, the little parts that you don't really agree with or don't really make sense tend to get overshadowed, and then you later start to kind of get behind those values and those morals because you agree with the majority of what they said. And one of their big techniques that they would teach people is the mirror exercise. The mirror exercise is all over their YouTube, their social medias. It's one of the biggest techniques that they offer. From their site, they describe the mirror exercise to, quote, "Step 1, identify the upset in a concise sentence. What are you upset with? What are you upset about? And why? For example, I'm upset with my twin flame because I feel rejected by him/her because he/she is ignoring me." Invert all the pronouns to point to yourself. We do this because what you experience externally is simply a reflection of an inner state. For example, I am upset with myself because I feel like I am rejecting myself and ignoring myself. Step 3, ask yourself whether this is true. The answer is yes. It will always be true because you can only experience a pattern that is within you. Example answer. Yes, it's true. I don't acknowledge my feelings and ignore and reject my own boundaries. I don't feel like I am good enough to be loved, so I ignore my needs and don't nurture myself. Step 4. Once you have identified this place within you, ask, what does he or she need to feel fully loved again right now? Give yourself the love that this part of you is asking for. Remain with this part of you until you feel it received everything he/she needed. Now, I do believe it is important for someone to take accountability for their own actions, but I think in this instance, it's one of those things where it kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't. For certain examples, it does kind of apply. If you are in a toxic friendship or a toxic relationship, you can ask yourself, this person is treating me this way, but I also don't have to tolerate being treated this way. I can stick up for myself. But the mirror exercise does not apply for every single situation. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. All the time, bad things happen to good people. If nothing bad ever happened to anyone, we would never grow and we would never learn. Of course, bad things are going to happen to you, even if you are a good person. That doesn't mean that it's your fault 24/7. Like, if your house were to get broken into right now, you would not do the mirror exercise and think, why am I allowing my house to get broken into right now? That is definitely something that has nothing to do with you and is not a reflection of you at all, because you didn't do anything. But the mirror exercise is basically setting it up to seem like everything is your fault and everything that is happening in your life is just a reflection of how you feel on the inside. Now, again, this kind of does make sense, because if you were to have a negative outlook on your life, you would be perceiving your life as negative. But if you had a positive outlook on life, then you would be perceiving your life as positive. So that little portion does kind of make sense, but it's not true to every single situation. And even within the steps of this mirror exercise, there's slight manipulation techniques, such as, quote, invert all pronouns to point to yourself, saying that if someone hurt you, then you have to dig deeper and ask why you feel hurt by this, instead of just asking the other person and telling these things to the other person. You can't do that. You have to keep it inside and ask yourself instead. And even in another portion where it says, quote, I don't acknowledge my feelings and ignore and reject my own boundaries. In that little example, I don't acknowledge my feelings makes no sense, because you're literally acknowledging your feelings right now. You acknowledge that you feel a specific way and you're sitting alone with your emotions trying to decipher how you feel. That is you actively acknowledging your emotions. And the last step literally just says, get over it, basically. If you think someone else is the problem, it's probably you, so you should sit with yourself and then hope it goes away until you basically just trauma block it, and then you're okay with it. There was this one victim of Twin Flames Universe that claimed that when she joined Twin Flames Universe, she was looking for love because she recently just got out of a really bad divorce. But when she was talking to Jeff and Shalia about her divorce, they had mentioned that the reason she couldn't find her twin flame was because her ex-husband was actually her twin flame. And so this woman, as encouraged by Jeff and Shalia to go out there, be bold, go get your twin flame, he's yours, he's probably just scared. This woman ended up pushing the boundary so much that she had a restraining order against her. And then when she told Jeff and Shalia about the restraining order, they basically just said, oh no, the restraining order doesn't exist. If you think it doesn't exist, then it doesn't exist. He's probably just scared because he's so in love with you and he doesn't know what to do. But she ended up breaking the restraining order and spent a month in jail after breaking that restraining order. And even after she got out of jail, Jeff and Shalia made her and manipulated her to think that that whole thing was her fault, and was forced to do the mirror exercise and basically take all accountability, all responsibility off of themselves and onto this girl, even though she was being encouraged to do all of this by Jeff and Shalia. And if it was successful, they would have gladly taken all the credit for that. But since it wasn't successful, they're trying to get as much blame off of them as they can.
So, dissolve that marriage. Don't worry about that spouse.
Yeah.
If your heart's true calling is your twin flame, there's nothing that can stand between the two of you. Nothing at all.
Yeah.
And in 2018 is when Twin Flames Universe would have their very first in-person meetup for about 30 people in New York. Jeff and Shalia had invited a bunch of people in Twin Flames Universe to come out at this meetup. They even got 2 Airbnbs for people to stay at, and they even paid for the plane tickets of some of the people to come out and attend. But one of the people that came, we'll call her M, because at the time she was 18 when she joined Twin Flames Universe, and she was actually introduced to Twin Flames through her sister, who had been in Twin Flames universe for a while and even met her twin flame, which ironically was her ex-boyfriend. Jeff and Shalea had manipulated her to get with her ex-boyfriend, make her believe that they were twin flames, they were together, and now this sister was inviting her little sister, her 18-year-old sister, to go out to this meetup in New York. So Em went out to this meetup with her sister and her sister's twin flame, and the first night they were there at the Airbnb is when Em started to tell a bunch of people how she really wanted to meet her twin flame, but she was just confused and didn't really know how to pursue that. So that's when Jeff and Shalea had suggested they do a ceremony to call in Em's twin flame, where they basically all gathered around Em, had their hands kind of like in front of her, and started yelling things at her like, "Do you want love? Are you ready to find the love of your life?" And while all of this is happening, Em is sobbing and crying because she's just so overwhelmed with the emotions of everything going on. After this ceremony is when Em was contacted through Facebook Messenger by a random man, and this random man was a 30-year-old man from Utah and had sent a love song to Em. Em had spoke about this at the actual event in New York, saying that she had a guy reach out to her on Facebook Messenger and he had sent this like love song to her, but she just kind of thought it was like really weird and that the guy was weird. But Jeff and Shalea told Em, no, he's not weird. He's your twin flame. It's not a coincidence that the next day after we do the ceremony, he randomly reaches out. That is your twin flame. And this girl started to believe that this man from Utah, 30 years old, she was 19, that this man actually was her twin flame. Now, when she talked more to this guy, whose name was Josh, when she started to talk more with Josh, she started to realize that his lifestyle was not something that she was used to. Josh had a very long criminal history. He also struggled with a lot of substance abuses such as drugs and alcohol, and currently could not leave the state of Utah due to his probation. So when Em approached Jeff and Shalea about her situation, about how he couldn't move out of Utah because of his probation and his long criminal history, Jeff and Shalea basically said, this is just a blockage in your guys' love. Don't worry, this is your twin flame. You need to go out there and fight for him. And Jeff and Shalea had manipulated this 19-year-old girl to pack up her things at her parents' house and move all the way out to Utah to be with this man. And she ended up staying with this man for 3 years. This man, Josh, also had schizoaffective disorder, which was basically a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar, and he wasn't looking to get any help and wasn't taking any medications. And so this led Em in a very difficult spot. She didn't know what to do and she didn't know how to help. So she decided to go to Jeff for a little bit of advice. But instead of Jeff offering her one-on-one advice, he then decided to create a YouTube live and decided to air out all of Em's business on live and coach her and tell her that his probation was actually just a sign to get Em down to Utah because she needed to be in Utah for some reason. Well, don't you think that maybe if Josh had as great of a childhood as you did, then maybe he wouldn't be the way that he is? Basically just, again, putting blame onto her for his actions and his choices.
I can't reach in and pull out the core block until the foundation is laid out. And we've pointed to it, but there's no way you're going to get access to it until you've built trust. And that trust is that system, that safety. He's not going to open up and into the place where he needs to be. He's not going to be vulnerable until he feels safe. And if you're feeling really attacked, or you're feeling like it's not safe, there's no way you're going to open up and be vulnerable, because you would just open yourself up to further psychosis. So it's building that trust with Josh and building that security and that foundation.
But even with all of these people joining Twin Flames universe, wanting to find love, it seemed like there was so many people in this group, but not a lot of couples were being made. And so then that made Jeff and Sheila look a little bit like they were an unsuccessful business, or that they were giving unsuccessful advice. So in order to make themselves seem more successful, couple, they needed to create more couples. And so that is when Jeff and Shalea started to introduce, they had a very deep spiritual connection and could actually see who someone's twin flame is. And so Jeff and Shalea then started to matchmake people in the group, saying, well, I had a very deep meditation and I believe that your twin flame is this person, and just name another person in the group. And some of these people would even travel across states believing in Jeff and Shalea that this was their twin flame. They didn't have to do any of the work to find love because Jeff and Shalea just did it for them.
Because we've been in harmonious union for years, we very much have achieved that miracle of being able to see and confirm someone's twin flames.
Now, the more people that joined Twin Flames universe, the more money that this brought in. So that is when Jeff and Shalea, I'm assuming, started to become very obsessed with this income and obsessed with all of the money that they were getting. And so that's when they had hired someone to take care of their finances, who eventually later left the group and exposed the group, and basically said that they were given the task as head of finances to research into certain ways that they'd be able to pay the least amount of taxes and make the most amount of money. And so how they decided to structure this was Twin Flames Universe. They decided to make that a non-profit organization. And then they decided to create a partner company, which was called Church of Union, which was a religious organization. So they didn't have to pay taxes. They just had to talk about God every now and then to make it a religious organization. It was a church that they were creating where they talked about God and the teachings of Jesus, but it was also kind of intertwined with their own personal beliefs. Now, it is very obvious that they did this so that they'd be able to make all of the profit and not have to give the money to the state or anything. And Jeff actually said this in a Zoom call with everyone and said that it's better if they switch themselves to a religion because then they don't have to pay anyone. They could just accept volunteers.
The internet is a place teeming with people with problems. And if you walk up with a solution, oh, honey, people are lined up out your door. I've got the solution.
Yes, what's that?
We're going to turn part of our company into a religion. And in this way, I don't have to pay people. I can just have volunteers.
They changed their name to, quote, Church of Union, and declared their main branch as a church, but was actually running 4 different paywall companies underneath their nonprofit. So even though they had technically a nonprofit and didn't have to pay taxes, there were other things underneath that did run through a paywall, such as their e-courses and their Twin Ascension School. But what the hook is once you're actually in there, you have no choice but to pay more and more money. But all of that money that they were getting, they no longer have to pay taxes on it. They could just collect all of the money and take home everything. And not only were they claiming that they were a religious organization and that everybody should listen to them, they also further claimed that the reason everybody should be listening to them and not anybody else is because they have a deeper connection with God, and that is because Jeff is Jesus Christ. I'm not even kidding. Jeff claimed that he was the second coming of Jesus Christ.
And saying download, and I heard God speak to me in a very clear as day voice, the images of Jesus is the image of Jeff. That's the prophecy you've been looking for. It is not written. It is in visual format. And I'm like, oh my God.
I pulled up a recent image of myself and put it next to that image of the supposed Jesus, and it's the same person. Those images were images of me, not a Jewish guy from Israel, but a Euro guy with blue eyes and brown hair. The image of the Christ was actually me, the second coming, not Jesus, the first coming.
I'm banging the Christ.
Now, when Jeff had said this, it did cause a lot of uproar within the community, and it did leave a lot of the community to leave. But unfortunately, at this point, there were around 10,000 members in this group. So even though people left, a majority of them stayed. And that's mostly because everybody in this community had a job or a role for Twin Flames Universe. There were people that were working for Twin Flames Universe that had crazy job titles. They had a whole sales department. They had like head of sales, a sales representative. They had department chairs. They even had like a video game editor. There was a video editor, a social media manager. They had every job you could think of, yet all of them were not getting paid because they were actively paying for more courses and more teaching so that they would be able to work their way up at the possibility of getting paid. Again, it didn't seem like in the moment that they were wasting money. It was more like an investment to get somewhere higher, kind of like actual school. Their teachings were expanding farther. Now they had people from the USA, from Canada, the UK, India. People were coming to learn about Twin Flames Universe and learn about Jeff and Shalea. But now, especially with Jeff claiming that he's the second coming of Jesus Christ, every time someone tried to argue with him or deny him or call him wrong, he immediately just said, "How can you deny me when I am the second coming of Christ? Everything that I say is true. And if you don't believe it to be true, then that's just your blockage. That is just you needing to do the mirror exercise and wondering that if my teachings are making you uncomfortable, then why are you uncomfortable? What makes my freedom make you feel uncomfortable?" And Jeff and Shalea would go on to say that if they did not believe his teachings, that they were also actively denying God, because all of his teachings were God's teachings. But another topic of discussion that Jeff and Shalea also loved to touch on was divine feminine and masculine energy. Divine feminine and masculine energy was something that they would talk about very often. And so their beliefs when it came to that was, in a relationship, there is a divine feminine energy and there is a divine masculine energy. That does not mean it has to be a woman and a man. It just means that one or the other has to represent a divine feminine and a divine masculine. And once you have those two pieces, you come together in harmonious union. So they were claiming that even if you were in a female and female or male and male relationship, that is okay, but just as long as one of you has female divine energy and the other has masculine divine energy. They did not believe that two masculine energies, so two men that were very manly, they were not allowed to be in love. They were not allowed to have love because that just doesn't make sense. Like if you were two people that carried on very stereotypical, I'm assuming, feminine qualities to you, and you both had that, that also was not allowed. That could not work. One of you had to be masculine energy and the other had to be feminine energy. So that is where Jeff started to gain more and more control over this community. And not only was he able to talk about the divine masculine and feminine, but said that since he came from the teachings of God, he was not only able to see who someone's twin flame was, but he was also able to meditate and find out if someone was truly divine feminine or divine masculine. Now, a big contributing factor as to why a lot of people think that they did this is because in the group, it was a lot more women than men. And so if you were trying to pair people up in a group, the ratio of men to women were not really a lot. And so what they needed to do was create more men in the group to pair them up with the women that haven't gotten paired up yet. And that is, and unfortunately what they did was tell people if they were masculine or feminine. But if you were a woman and you were told that you were masculine, that did not mean to, lean more into your masculine side. That was lean into everything masculine, including name changing and top surgery, which unfortunately a lot of people did, purely just because Jeff and Shalea had told them to. And since Jeff was the teachings of God and you didn't want to deny God, you were just kind of going through the motions of what you felt like you should be doing. Now, this created a lot of gender confusion amongst a lot of people. There was one victim that said she was forced to sit on a 48-hour Zoom call with Jeff and Shalea. She wasn't allowed allowed to get up, she wasn't allowed to sleep or eat or drink until she removed the blockage and confessed that she was actually a man and not a woman. They claimed that if you had doubts about what they were saying, then that was just a spiritual blockage, and claims that once you start believing, then that is a sign that you are coming into clarity and opening up your eyes to the truth. And if you start believing in their teachings, don't be scared. That's literally just clarity. That's what peace feels like, and you should build and capitalize on that. But really what you're building and capitalizing on is whatever Jeff and Shalea told you to capitalize on, nothing of what you told yourself you should be doing. So there was another video called by the name of G. So G was on a call with Jeff and Shalea, basically saying how she's struggling to find her twin flame. And that's when Jeff tells her, well, the reason why you're struggling to find your twin flame is because your twin flame is already in the group. And they named off like another member of the group, and G was a bit confused because this other member was a female and she was straight. But then that's when Jeff and Shalea told her that she was actually masculine energy and not feminine energy. And this was a bit of a shock because she always felt like she was feminine. She didn't really feel like she was in the wrong body or pursuing the wrong things. Jeff and Shalea had told her that she should lean more into her masculine side. And if she does still feel feminine, then maybe she needs to do the mirror exercise. And the more that she accepts that she is more masculine energy is the moment that she will gain more clarity and receive her twin flame. And so when you're in a situation like that, it's really hard to say no. Well, I'm not masculine, I'm feminine. Jeff would immediately just cut you off and say, no, you're not. No, you're not. See, no, that's a spiritual blockage. Once you start accepting that you are masculine, that is me simply helping you release that spiritual blockage. So you need to meditate, you need to do the mirror exercise, and the more you do that, the more you will see that you're actually more masculine than feminine. So G began doing mirror exercises. They started to meditate, and then over time, G then came out as male and even came out to their family as male as well. Once they did the work and they were finally masculine energy, that's when Shalea put G and this other member together, and Jeff and Shalea basically got to go on Zoom and prop their relationship up like a trophy on a shelf and say, hey everyone, look at what we accomplished here today. See, if you just do your ascension training, if you go to school and if you do these e-courses, you can be as happy as them. It really just is that simple, you guys. But no one ever knew that these couples were actually planted together by Jeff and Shalea, or that they were actually unhappy. They were just forced to keep up these happy faces for the exception and validation of Jeff and Shalea. They felt trapped to say no. They couldn't go against what Jeff and Shalea were telling them.
Kind of started talking about this a little bit earlier about how, we've only been really attracted to men our whole lives. So it is a different experience.
Now, there was another member of the group named Anne that dealt with a very similar situation like this. She was told by Jeff and Shalea that she was more masculine energy than she was feminine energy. And to a certain extent, this actually made sense to Anne. She felt like all her life she was a little bit more masculine, like to do the typical feminine things or wear feminine things. So to a certain extent, this did make sense for her. So she cut her hair, she started wearing more masculine clothing. But the one thing that she didn't want to change was her pronouns and her name. She still wanted to go by she, her, and she still wanted to have her name Anne. But in a Zoom call, that's when Jeff had basically told Anne in front of everyone, because this was a group call, well, if you're, claiming to be masculine energy, then don't you think it's a little weird to have such a feminine name? And Anne sits there a little bit shocked, as you'll see in the clip that I'm about to show you. Jeff just gives her the name and says, how about Dan? Do you like the name Dan? Yeah, I could consider changing my name. I never really wanted to change my name, but I'll consider it. And then that's when Jeff just flings his arms up in the air and says, okay, perfect. Your name is Dan now.
I'm going to ask about some things, some specific things, and they're going to be sensitive subjects. And so I want to respect everyone in encountering this sort of topic so that everyone can feel at peace and at ease and not pressured about the subject. Because it can be very sensitive to people, and understandably so. Okay. So are you comfortable with everything I just said, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I want to ask Katrina first. Katrina, what is it like to be with a divine masculine in a woman's body? You love Anne completely physically.
Yeah, I love Anne's physical form completely, everything that Anne is. My level of attraction doesn't change based on the way Anne expresses gender at all.
How do you feel about having such a feminine name, being called such a feminine name as Anne?
It's how I've always, I guess, labeled myself and referred to myself. So
why would you keep a name that's so obviously feminine?
I don't know. I haven't really thought about it.
What about Dan? Doesn't feel good about the name Dan.
I don't know. It just doesn't resonate.
Jesus Christ. You're playing an avoidance game. And it's the avoidance game that prevents you from moving forward here. Just let the name be.
I would consider that name.
Yeah.
There. Anne the Man and Katrina. It's been a lovely class with you guys.
Thank you.
So the following week, when they get onto Zoom, that's when Jeff refers to Anne as Dan. And even though Anne had told Jeff, I don't really like the name Dan, I prefer to be called Anne, Jeff just didn't care and rode right past it until the next week. Jeff literally opened up the meeting talking to Anne and calling her Dan the Man and saying like, Dan the Man, what's up? And Anne again corrects Jeff and says, no, I don't really like the name Dan. I kind of prefer to be called Anne. So then Jeff is assertive, but makes it a joke or makes it sound like a joke because he's laughing through it. And then basically just again, rides right past it and manipulates her into thinking that she actually does like the name, even though she said multiple times that she doesn't. So after this is when things started to get a little bit out of control for Anne. She did not want to change her name, so she just decided to message Jeff directly and basically tell him, my name is Anne. I don't want to go by Dan. This is who I am. Just because I'm more masculine does not mean that I have to change everything about me to be masculine. And that's when Jeff would not reply to Anne, but text her girlfriend. So Anne was basically in a relationship at this point with another woman. And so Jeff had contacted Anne's girlfriend and said, quote, not sure why you and your man have not decided to handle this gender identity issue. There is literally no logical reason to not do so immediately. And then follows that up by saying, quote, change Anne's name immediately. It's time. He's a guy, take a guy's name and a guy's pronoun, or I will need to put someone else in charge of sales who does respect my work. Thank you. 1 week. Basically, again, putting a timeline on these things, forcing these people to basically mold their identity to what is most pleasable to Jeff and not themselves. But after this text message conversation, Jeff and Anne's girlfriend kind of went back and forth, with Anne's girlfriend saying, I think Anne should just take it at her own pace, do things on her own time. But then after this, the next morning, Anne and her girlfriend woke up. They were logged out of all of their coaching. They were logged out of all of their accounts, all of their social media accounts. They were blocked by all of the socials, all of the numbers to Twin Flames Universe. They were even logged off of the payroll because both of them worked in the sales department. So they were no longer on the payroll and were literally shunned from the community just because Anne didn't want to take a name that Jeff made up in a split second. I'm pretty sure he gave her the name Dan because it sounds like Anne, which is honestly very creative. Dan, Anne, how did he come up with that one? But he basically was just getting mad over this person not being okay with Jeff just taking their whole identity and changing it in a split second and not really understanding what that does to the other person. And Twin Flames Universe just began to grow. At this point, Twin Flames Universe had about 30,000 members and over 20,000 coaches. Jeff and Shalea were also suspected to make around $100,000 to $200,000 a month. And yes, that is correct, a month, because technically Jeff and Shalea don't have to do anything. All they did was do the work, do the teachings, and now people are just relaying those teachings onto other people, and they don't have to do anything. And the money does add up, because in order to be a coach, you need to complete all the programs. So say there's 25 coaches all completing the $9,000 coaching program. That's $225 off of 25 coaches alone. They have over 20,000 coaches and over 30,000 members. And that doesn't even include that all of the coaches are probably paying for their own classes and their own work on top of what they're coaching. And these prices wouldn't just be outrageous from the beginning. They would have ways to kind of lure you in, such as starting out the sessions at only $20. And then at the end of the session, they say, oh man, if only we had like a longer session. You can actually expand to a longer session. It's about $40, but you get a lot more in-depth teaching that way. So people then, it's only $20 more. Let me put out the $40. But then that 40 will turn into 80 and then turn into 120. And then we'll go to 150 and then maybe 180, maybe 250. And then before you know it, you're paying $1,000 a session. You're a coach and you're also head of department of sales, and you're not making any money. You're at that point so deep into it, it's hard for you to get out and it's hard for you to say no, but that is just how quick they're able to hook you in. And Jeff and Shalea were also not quiet about all of the money that they were getting. And during this time, they also showed off their 5-bedroom mansion that they were able to get in Michigan, and even bragged about their big pool and being multi-millionaires. Jeff would show off his $100,000 Lamborghini that he just bought, as well as another $80,000 Corvette that he just bought. And he also bought specific Ray-Ban sunglasses that he only wears when he's driving the Corvette, and calls it his Corvette sunglasses.
This is my house. This is the back of it. This is my pool, my slide, my little hot tub, 85-inch TV screen. I could purchase one of those every single week. $15,000 in crystals here. It's a good life.
Now, Jeff and Shalea, since they have this big home, this big 5-bedroom home, that's when they decide to start doing retreats at their home, where some of the close members, some of the members that have been there since the beginning, will come out to live at the house temporarily and basically get more intimate training and see Jeff and Shalea and be in their energy every single day. Now, I'm assuming why they allowed people to stay there, since they have this business is technically like a religious organization, and if they use their house for business, they could declare their house as a business expense and basically just get the house for free, while also pocketing all the profits of other people. And even if you were to go and live at the house, it didn't really seem like a retreat, because everyone there were doing things like cooking and cleaning and yard work. It literally just looked like unpaid labor. And Jeff would also brag about his wealth on his Facebook page all the time, constantly posting about all the crazy renovations that he's doing in his home. And if you are watching that as Jeff, a person that you know personally, if you're in the group, you see something like that and you see it as motivation. You think, oh my God, if Jeff can accomplish something like this, then maybe one day I can as well, without even really thinking, how is Jeff getting that money? That money is coming from other people like you that are giving him money. No one in that group can actually live the lavish lifestyle and achieve the lifestyle that Jeff and Shalea have, because all of the money that they would have spent on creating that dream for themselves is now going towards Jeff and Shalea to create that dream for themselves. Shalea and Jeff would also accept donations from people. They even had a donate page that the lowest you can go is $11 and the highest you can go is $111. They required at least 10% of your income just in donations. That's not even including paying for school or classes. And they even write that if you're not financially stable enough, then, quote, Perhaps you'll find most peace and joy in donations wherever you have some extra that feels good for you to invest in creating heaven on earth. I don't even know what that says. They're literally not saying like direct things. They're not saying like, oh, well, if you feel like you're not financially stable enough to donate, don't worry, you don't have to donate. That's the whole point of a donation. You get to choose if you donate or not. But the way that they're putting it, even if you're financially unstable, maybe if you have a couple of extra dollars, you could probably prioritize that and giving it to us, even though we're multimillionaires. You could probably just give that to us instead of, maybe putting it back into yourself. And if you go to the Twin Flames Universe site, you would notice that a lot of their success stories or a lot of their successful relationships are typically always people who were an ex or like knew each other before, or they met within the Twin Flames universe. But that is a whole nother conversation about Twin Flames universe. If the purpose of this community is to find love and find your twin flame, and then you do just that and you find your twin flame, then why are you still there? And that is how Jeff and Shalea are able to keep people to stay even after they've already accomplished what they went there to accomplish. They again make them head of department sales. They make them the video editor. They make them responsible and take care of all of these things. So they have a responsibility and an obligation to stay even if they don't want to. They kept on saying that the reason why they are in Twin Flames is that everything happens for a reason. And if you are currently in Twin Flames universe, it's probably because your twin flame is also in Twin Flames universe. They say that if you and your twin flame are on the same path and are truly meant to see each other, then you will end up at the same time, at the same moment, and that moment is now in Twin Flames universe, because Jeff and Shalea are all-knowing. They are powerful, and that is why Twin Flames universe is such a gift to you, because it's a gift that you get to now know your twin flame, thanks to Jeff and Sheila for bringing you guys together through their spiritual powers and connection with God. Which again, kind of makes sense, kind of doesn't. There are things that happen for reasons, but we don't know if those reasons are good or bad. We don't know if things happen to us to teach us good lessons or bad lessons, to stay or turn the other way. That is just the way life goes, and the more that you live your life, the more you will start to realize the reasons as to why specific things happen to you. So that part does kind of make sense, but the fact that Jeff and Shalea are basically telling you everything happens for a reason, and although we may not know what that reason is, Jeff and Shalea know the reason. They of course know the reason because they know everything, and they know the reason why you're here is to meet your twin flame. So in 2019 is when Twin Flames Universe introduced their MAP program. So what their MAP program was, all the programs that I've been showing you so far, like the e-courses and the Ascension School, all of that is available on the Twin Flames Universe site. But the MAP program was a completely different site and even looked completely different. It looked a lot more official, kind of like the website you would see from a clinic. Even the MAP program logo looked like an FBI logo. I don't know, if you're stumbling across the website, you think that the service you're getting is very official. And even the practitioners that they had for the MAP program were people with degrees in engineering and 12 years of experience. Another person had a degree in psychotherapy. They seem like very reliable and trusted sources. Underneath all of the descriptions of people who were practitioners, that they had certifications in Twin Flames Universe Ascension School or had completed the MAP program. Now, since this is kind of like a partner company to Twin Flames Universe, in order to become a practitioner, you need to complete the MAP program, which is created by Jeff and Sheila. And then even before that, you need to complete the Twin Flames Universe Ascension School. So they're already spending so much money getting into Twin Flames Universe, learning all about like the teachings and beliefs that Jeff and Sheila believe, and then they study that, and then when you're in the MAP program, they are basically kind of just doing what a coach does and relaying that information onto the people that they're talking to. But within this, the MAP program claimed that they were specifically helping people with PTSD or quote-unquote traumatic traumatic flashbacks. And they were able to use the teachings of Jeff and Shelia in order to help you to heal your traumas. But what this really was a way for Jeff and Shelia to disconnect people from their families. They would start to tell people that, you know, we're not telling you to let go of your families and get rid of them, but we're just saying, you know, sometimes negative energy manifests more negative energy. So if you feel like you have a traumatic past with your family and there's some negative energy there, it wouldn't be that bad of an idea just to like get them out of here. You know, you have 40 people here that love and support you. Your family are just people. So what's the difference? Why would you go back to people that don't love you when you could come to people that do love you?
Yeah, we had to like release those relationships because we couldn't have manifested our dreams being around people that were intentionally trying to keep our vibration down. I don't want to say everyone who's having these problems, you know, chuck your family and friends out the window, but just be aware of like the ones that are trying to bring your vibration down, and that's like that's playing with fire. Window, but just be aware of like the ones that are trying to bring your vibration down, and that's like that's playing with fire.
Now, this of course is not genuine help. If you were actually talking to a therapist or someone that was trying to help you, they would probably help you heal the bond with your family and help you understand your family and their circumstances and your circumstances, and basically help you where maybe you are at peace with your family and you can still talk to them without judgment or without anger. And that's usually what a therapist will help you do, to heal that trauma and heal the relationship with your family, not just tell you to cut your family off in general. That is something that someone will do if they're trying to control you, not help you heal. Jeff and Shelia would also create what's called the Divine Dish, which was basically another company of theirs. It was kind of like a HelloFresh service. You could pay anywhere from $50 to $100 a month just for recipes. Apparently, Jeff and Shelia had claimed that they worked with nutritionists and doctors and came up with this perfect diet, and people were required to send pictures of their meals every single day to make sure that they actually were eating what they said they were, and they were also required to eat all of their food. And the craziest part is that you were literally just paying $100 for the recipes. The ingredients did not come with it. You had to go out and buy your own ingredients and make the food at home. But as you know, all of our bodies are different. We all respond to food differently. All of our bodies respond to different things differently. And so with a diet like this, it was very heavy into red meats and lots of protein. And one victim in the cult, her name was Keely, and Keely had said that after this, a lot of people had suffered a lot of medical conditions due to the intense nature of this diet, and even her herself had gained 70 pounds in 9 months. She felt like at this point she had no control over her body, that she was basically just being forced to eat all of these things and forced to change her body. And she felt like, and every time she ate the food, she always felt sick afterwards because of how much she was consuming. But Jeff, nonetheless, at this point, beginning of 2020, had lots of streams of income. He had coaching training, Divine Dish, one-on-one sessions, group calls, the MAP program. And within all of that, Jeff would proudly announce that he had made $500,000 in 1 year.
Here in business, I think we did about $25,000. We doubled it and then we tripled it. And this year we'll do, probably at least $500,000 and triple it again.
I am sick. I want to be healed. Oh, we have mind alignment process. I'm starving. I want to be fed well. I'll have Divine Dish.
So Angie was head of Department of Sales, and she had basically told Jeff and Shelia about her struggles to find her twin flame. And Jeff and Shelia had told her that she couldn't find her twin flame because her twin flame was her ex. So she tried to pursue things with her ex. She tried talking to him constantly. He was not reciprocating at all. He kept on telling her to stop texting me, stop calling me. I don't want to continue this anymore. But every time Angie would tell that to Jeff and Shelia, of what was happening, they would just say, oh, he's just super scared right now. He's your twin flame and he's freaking out because he doesn't know what's going on. But you know what? This is just what always happens. You have to be bold. You have to be persistent, and you have to fight for the person that you love. What is love if you can't fight for it? If you can't be passionate about it? And this is exactly what you have to do to your twin flame. She texted him, she called him, she tried all of these things until one day she was just completely blocked off of everything. When she went to Jeff and Shalia, she was basically told to do the mirror exercise and told that it was all her fault that this had happened. Jeff and Shalia were just giving her advice. She didn't have to take the advice. Take accountability. These were your choices, not theirs. And that is exactly what they do. They try to manipulate you into thinking that this is all your fault so that they get to walk away blame-free.
Have you experienced from the beginning of class until now only positive, only love? Have you experienced only fear?
Mixture of both.
Liar! Sorry, that's my liar alarm going off.
Beep, 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 beep. Andrew's lying. Andrew's lying.
You fucking liar. Pretty fucking insane to think that and feel that.
So as you can see, the way that Jeff speaks, he tends to speak in a very demanding manner, but tends to laugh through it or kind of make fun of the situation so that the delivery doesn't seem as harsh, but it really is just very demanding when you take the tone out of it. And there was this one woman in Twin Flames universe that still to this day remains unnamed, but she was in Twin Flames universe and she was trying to find her twin flame and was very open about her struggles on the Facebook group. She would talk to Jeff and Shalia about it. They would just tell her to do the mirror exercise. She also told everyone that she struggled with anxiety and depression, and she felt like the mirror exercise was just making things worse and not really helping. That's when she had talked to Jeff and Shalia. I feel like I'm doing all this work, but nothing's working and nothing's happening. So that's when Jeff and Shalia had directed her to the MAP program. As you know, the MAP program is more money, and she just didn't have that money. And since she didn't have the money, she just felt like she had nowhere to go anymore, nowhere to turn, and no more resources to help her. Unfortunately, this woman did take her life as a result of this. Even though her death notice was given to Jeff and he was made aware of her death, nothing about this woman was posted to the Facebook page at all. She was never mentioned again. Every time someone tried to mention her, Jeff would immediately shut it down and not want to talk about it. He would not post anything about her on Facebook, and even if someone did try to post like a memorial just remembering her, Jeff would delete it off of the page so that no one knew about it. In 2021, Vice would come out with an article talking about Twin Flames universe, and this Vice article is what really made people look more into Twin Flames universe more as a cult and bring more attention to it. Now, when this article was released, Jeff basically told everyone in the group to not even read it, that it's not worth your time. And so in a scramble to find as many more success stories and make themselves feel more successful because this article came out and it's making them feel unsuccessful, they come out with a Facebook post where Jeff and Shalia basically said that they did this huge meditation and they were able to discover everyone in the group, everyone's twin flame, as well as if they were divine feminine energy or if they were divine masculine. So they posted this huge lineup of all of these pairs of people in the group as if they were getting assigned partners in class, except these were lifelong people that you have to basically spend the rest of your life with. This is a huge commitment. Yet Shalia and Jeff were just posting these names on the Facebook as if it didn't matter. And one of those names on this Facebook page was a woman named Angie. Angie had identified herself to be a woman, yet this list had listed her as divine masculine. Angie was very confused about this because she never had any questions about her femininity before. This felt very abrupt and it felt very unnatural. So she tried to relay these stresses onto Jeff and Shalia, but then she just got yelled at as a result of it.
Fuck you. My business depends on all of you. And I want to make sure that all of you are doing your fucking jobs. everyone's gonna be looking at everyone else.
So now we're in 2020. At this point, Jeff and Shalea have been very open about their struggles to get pregnant the past couple years. There was one point where Shalea even had to be on IVF due to her struggles of becoming pregnant, and they had been trying for many, many years. But in 2020, they revealed that they were pregnant and they were expecting a child. But once it was revealed that Shalea was pregnant, it seemed like the abuse in the group just got even worse. Every time someone questioned Jeff or Shalea or their teachings, they would just tell the person that they were actually hurting Shalea and hurting their baby, and their negative energy was affecting her and slowly killing her. So again, that just led more people in the group scared to say no and scared to stick up for themselves. And unfortunately, just a couple months after this pregnancy announcement, that's when they would announce that they had unfortunately had a miscarriage due to an ectopic pregnancy. And I hope I'm saying that right. I believe it's ectopic pregnancy, which instead of the egg, your fertilization egg, implanting into your uterus and creating the baby in your uterus, the egg is instead attached to the outside of your uterus, closer to your fallopian tube, and grows on the outside of your uterus, which will involve your baby to have many complications in the growing process. So because of this, they had suffered a miscarriage. But Shalea to this said that the miscarriage wasn't as a result of her pregnancy and her complications. It was actually the doctor's fault, and said that all of the doctors and all of their bad vibes and all of their negative energies is what caused her to have that miscarriage.
And for me, like, I'm obviously a spiritual person, and their intentions and their thoughts about me and the pregnancy, like, they do have spiritual power in the relationship. And because I've let them in as my partner, and they are like children, like they don't understand that their thoughts have power and that their words have power, and it can impact reality.
So after the miscarriage announcement is when Jeff and Shalea went on to do another announcement where they announced that they had bought a $3 million plot of land, and they planned on making their very first Twin Flames Universe in-person church and calling it Church of Union. And this was going to be a church that a lot of like the main people in the group were expected to live out there in trailers and live there until the whole church was built and being constructed by the people that lived there. And it was also expected that when you lived on this property that you were to have children with your twin flame, and those children would be called golden children, because the belief is that if you were with your twin flame, that means you are ascending at a different vibration than anyone else, because you have now received your other half. You are technically vibrating at a frequency that not a lot of other people are. And when you reach that harmonious union and you have a child, that child will already be born at a very high vibration. So they claimed that because of that, golden children will only be allowed to mate and date other golden children. Again, you can kind of start to see how the cult is slowly starting to form. And even the people that were in relationships and they couldn't have children, Jeff and Shalea also had announced that they would be giving surrogates to people who could not have children. And Jeff and Shalea would choose those surrogates in the group. So there were people during this time getting random emails from Jeff and Shalea saying that they have been selected to be a surrogate for a specific couple, even though that person did not consent to being a surrogate. They didn't know that they were going to be a surrogate and just, mess up their bodies for the rest of their lives for someone else. And they were basically just forced to do that because that is what Jeff and Shalea told them to do. So going back into Em and her story, Em had been dating that man, Josh, for 3 years and was currently still living with him. So her sister, Keely, Keely was also in the group with her twin flame. And around this time is when Keely, especially after this golden child thing came about, she really started to open up her eyes and realize what was going on. And so that's when Keely and her twin flame drove down to Utah to pick up her sister and drop her back off at her parents' house. And this was the first time that they had been seeing each other in a very long time. Keely was able to get her little sister out of that situation, and Keely then moved her back into their parents' house. But as for Keely and her twin flame, they went off, they got a divorce, and for a whole year and a half after that, Keely and her sister Em did not speak to one another, just because even looking at each other reminded them of the trauma that they went through. So in 2023, quite recently, about 2 years ago, is when Jeff and Shalea would announce their official pregnancy of their baby girl. Now, with this pregnancy, there was no complications, and they successfully did give birth to their daughter and named her Grace, and also named her as the community's first golden child. And as for today, in 2024 and 2025, the cult, as I mentioned, is still up and running. They still have an active website. A lot of people were able to escape the cult, but unfortunately, a lot of people are still in there. There's a lot of families on the outsides who have been completely cut off from their sons and their daughters. And I feel like a lot of people in this situation, even Jeff and Shalea, will probably say this themselves. A lot of the excuse that people give is, well, no one's forcing them to stay there. It's not like we're forcing them. It's not like we have them chained to a wall. They could leave anytime they want. It's their choice to stay here. But just because you are not physically controlling someone to stay does not mean you cannot mind control them and mentally control them to stay. And this is exactly what they do through their MAP programs, through their teaching, through their coaching. They're making you feel like you are a part of something, that you are doing good for many, many people. And when you capitalize on that feeling so much, you then start to believe all of the teachings around you, because you then associate those teachings and those beliefs with things that have brought you good things. But sometimes it's so easy to get wrapped up in those good things that you completely dismiss and override all of the horrible things that are going on as well. So yes, they're not chained to a wall. They're not forced to be there. Even if they were to say no and they were to challenge their beliefs, they would just shut them out of the community and immediately block them off of everything and just pretend as if they never even existed in the first place. That is not a loving community. That is not someone that is there for you whenever you are struggling. That is a person that is only there for you when you are valuable to them. And then the second that you are not valuable to them, that you start questioning their beliefs and questioning what they're doing, you serve no purpose. And so they immediately block you and shun you out of everything that you have worked so hard for. All of the money that you invested in now just gets to Jeff and Shalea, and now they get to like go on vacation and do whatever, but now you are left with nothing. And that is not a good thing. You should still have things to yourself that you believe in, that you love, that you are passionate about, even if that person or those main people were to leave. But anyway, that is the end of today's case. I hope you guys found this case interesting, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. As I said, this cult is still up and running today, so you could even check out the videos and the website for yourself. That is all from me. I hope you guys found this. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day today, and as always, I love you, I love you, I love you, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!